What's up, Banter fam? I hope you're having a lovely morning. Today's video is a super interesting one. I will be revealing my Luna price prediction for 2022 and beyond. The Luna ecosystem has been exploding as UST adoption is rapidly increasing. So I'm going to look through some models today, some price predictions, and some potential scenarios for the Luna price and for the Luna ecosystem. Let's get straight into it. What a day on the markets today. We have seen a massive pump across Bitcoin and altcoins. It looks to be a pretty Bitcoin dominant related run right now. It's really a Bitcoin run, which is really good because we're seeing the cycle kind of reset right now after a long downtrend for a couple months. So it's nice to see that we're getting some volume back in. It's good to see that the Bitcoin price has increased over 13% over the last 24 hours and also are responding pretty strongly as well. Not quite as strongly as Bitcoin, but still pretty strong. I mean, we look at Solana up 9.2%, Luna, which is the subject of today's video, which is up 20.2%. Massive gains today. Avalanche 15%. We're seeing a massive increase across all of crypto, which is super good news because it's been a bleak environment, for a little while over the last few weeks. But now we're starting to get some volume back in the market. We're starting to see some price increases across these altcoins, and it's being led by Bitcoin, which is a really positive sign because we haven't really seen, that Bitcoin dominance pump alongside Bitcoin for a while. So super positive signs from the market right now. And I want to share with you guys, just before we get into the Luna stuff, the easiest way to make money in crypto. I have a trading strategy, which is pretty foolproof, which is a great way to make money in crypto. And I did a tweet about it yesterday. And that is buying the dip. The 35K dip was the best decision I've ever made. I saw my feed was full of anger and panic, and I used that as a barometer to start buying. And here's my major tip for trading in crypto: counter trade Twitter sentiment. That's the easiest way to make money in crypto. Whatever Twitter's doing, if Twitter's panicking, if everyone's freaking out, saying we're going bear, that's when you buy. And when Twitter's ridiculously greedy, saying 10, 100x on multiple altcoins, that's probably when you take some profits. So it's a really simple way to make money in crypto. But if you're not really into charting, honestly, that's how you can make some serious gains, because you can use Twitter as a barometer to be able to dictate market sentiment. Because at the end of the day, the social medias are really dictators of market sentiment, like YouTube, Twitter, even things like TikTok. When, in the hype of the bull run, we saw multiple new creators coming out. So it's really a good way to be able to kind of gauge where we are in the cycle and gauge where we are in the market by looking at social media sentiment. So I did buy the 35K dip, which was pretty lucky, but at the same time, there was kind of a science to it because I saw Twitter was capitulating. I saw there was panic. I didn't deploy a whole lot. I only did like 10% of my cash balance, but I'm still comfortable DCAing in during extreme times of fear. Right now, the market's looking slightly greedier. It's probably not a time to be buying. I'm not taking profits yet because I just want to see where the market is kind of headed right now. But that is my strategy for making money in crypto. I hope you guys enjoyed that one. And really, this is just proof that things can change in a short amount of time. I mean, look at like 2 days ago, like the market was panicking, and now all of a sudden we're back at what's the Bitcoin price right now? 43K. So like we are steaming upwards again, and things can change really fast in this market. So, you don't want to be missing out on just educating yourself, continuing to be able to better your own crypto journey. Because at the end of the day, when we do get a major push up, like we did in May last year, we are going to see some, monumental gains, and you guys want to be positioned with the right education and the right tools to be able to fully take advantage of the next bull run. 2 years ago, I was doing a university course. I didn't really even enjoy it. I was studying property. It was pretty boring. I had my head in a textbook, for many years. And then, I finally just decided to, take the plunge into crypto and finally start, investing my time in something I actually enjoyed and something I'm passionate about. So, I'm living proof that you can actually, once you take the plunge, you can really, achieve something. And yeah, I'm doing what I love now. I'm getting paid to do it. It's a beautiful thing. And I think everyone that's watching this can do the same thing. If you have a passion for crypto, even, no matter what it is, it could be sports, crypto, music, follow your passion. And that is probably, my main tip. You want to be following your passion because passion can lead you places. So don't feel like you're stuck. There's always a way out, and crypto is giving people a way out. It's giving us a chance to achieve financial freedom, and that is the beauty of the crypto market. If you want to see some of my life behind the scenes, because obviously in these videos, I can't share everything with you behind the scenes. I'm mostly sharing with you like crypto alpha and stuff. follow my Instagram. It's a link in the description. Follow my Instagram. I'm actually in Cape Town right now. First time in Cape Town. I'm in Banter HQ with all the guys. It's been a super awesome experience. So I will be documenting the entire journey, my entire trip on my Instagram, on my stories and posts. So make sure you follow that link in the description if you want to find out a little bit more about myself, because I want you guys to get to know me better. I want to get to know you, and Instagram's just a great way to do that on top of the daily shows that I obviously do to help you guys in this market. But we've seen a strong response across multiple ecosystems. Look at the Phantom ecosystem with Solidly. Look at the kind of monumental growth we're getting, like 20% across most of these altcoins. And it's not just Phantom, it's also AVAX, it's also gaming. We're seeing multiple ecosystems really come to fruition right now. And as I said, it is a Bitcoin-led run right now. Bitcoin, the dominance is going up. It definitely is looking very strong for Bitcoin, but it's also looking great for alts. Like the altcoins are performing super well as well, which is a positive sign because we can start positioning ourselves in the right projects. And there's no stronger project in terms of fundamentals than Luna, in my opinion. It does have its flaws and it does have its pluses. And today's video is really dedicated to breaking down what I think of Luna. What's the price potential of Luna? I know it's pumped 20% in the last day. When should you be getting in? I even got Sheldon's charts today that he made for us just before the show that I can actually show you what a good entry on Luna would be. So today's video is kind of breaking down my price prediction. And I don't mean price prediction in like a spammy way. I mean like what are the things that need to happen for Luna to hit certain prices, and what's the likelihood? What do I think is the likelihood of Luna hitting certain prices? Because price predictions are a spectrum. It's not like I can just come on here and say, oh, Luna's hitting $2,000, next week. No, like no one knows how the market will turn out. But there are certain factors that we can study using data, hard data and statistics that we can break down to kind of make our best guess on where the ecosystem is headed and where the Luna token is headed. So that's what I will be breaking down today. Some price modeling. I'll show you guys when to enter, when a safer entry is, because obviously we're pumped. I'll also go through what's happening with UST and UST adoption, because it's super important and it's one of the biggest narratives in crypto right now, and it's not one you want to miss out. So let's get straight into it and jump into Sheldon's charts that he made for us before this show. And we can see here that Luna has pumped. It's pumped 87% since the lows a couple of weeks ago. So it's made a real big push up. This is kind of off the back of this mass UST adoption that I'll break down in a second. We can see that the price went from the low of 43 all the way up to this $89 region where we were sitting yesterday. So a massive push up. And as we can see on the charts here, we've got this trend line, and I'm much more comfortable buying around the buy zone of around $71. I know it's tempting to FOMO into the greed, but remember what I told you about sentiment. You want to be buying fear, and you want to be buying the pullbacks and not buying the pumps, guys. It's one of the simplest tips in crypto I can give you. You don't want to be buying into the hype and getting too carried away, but at the same time, we know the Luna fundamentals are great. So you want to have this on your watch list. Sheldon actually has this on his Coin Panel if you're a Coin Panel subscriber, and you can view this chart and view Sheldon's charts because it kind of gives us a better idea of when we want to be buying, when we want to get our entry. We can see the RSI right now is quite overbought. We're kind of ticking over this high right now. If we pull back into the oversold region, that's the region I'm looking to capitalize and take advantage. And hopefully this kind of coincides with this buy zone around $70 as well. So we want to wait until the RSI ticks over on the daily, comes into the oversold territory before we are buying. Instead of buying in this overbought territory, I know it's tempting to ape in, but we do want to wait for that pullback. And that's something I always preach in crypto. So wait till that RSI bottoms and then start deploying. But obviously we need to frame this in the macro sense, because charts are great because they give us an idea of sentiment, but we've got to frame where Luna is actually sitting right now and what the potential is. Because if we're catching the pullback at 70, how high can this thing go? What kind of multiples are we looking at over the next year or so to do with Luna? So let's break down the fundamentals and let's get into some price predictions, because I think it's really awesome to be able to step back and kind of look at what's happening on chain, on the Terra chain, and then what's also happening with UST adoption, because we've seen some crazy things right now. Before I do that, I just want to break down what Luna is, because not everyone watching right now will know exactly how it operates. So Luna is pretty much a blockchain payment network. It's designed to issue algorithmic stablecoins. So UST is a stablecoin that is built on top of the Terra network. It can power transactions like we saw with Chai payments in Korea, and it can also power many DeFi protocols that need a stablecoin. It's a decentralized stablecoin, so it runs less regulatory risk, and it's also a coin that's held pretty good peg recently. Obviously, during that major dip we got a year ago, or I think it was March 2020 actually, the UST price dropped down to around 88 cents. But since then, we've seen, hold peg pretty well. We've seen it at around $1 and the peg has been pretty steady. So I do like UST as a stable, and it plays that decentralized kind of narrative because stable coins like USDT, sorry, and USDC, they're centralized. So they do run the risk of potentially, having some issuing or regulatory body implementing restrictions on those coins. Whereas UST is decentralized, it's a lot harder to regulate. So it does play, and it does bode pretty well for that narrative right now. Because decentralization, I mean, that's the point of crypto, right? And UST is the best decentralized stable, in my opinion. So it's a great, great coin. But Luna actually does more than just offer UST. It actually has multiple stable coins. It's got a Euro coin, it's got a Korean coin, it's got all coins from all around the world. Terra is really a blockchain which facilitates payments. Yes, we've got DeFi. Yes, we've got multiple other things like potentially even gaming and NFTs on Luna. But what we also have is payments. And it's really unique because not many other L1s kind of have this focus. Like when you think of Phantom, like, yeah, it's really DeFi orientated, but it's not so in the payment space. Like you've got Tree, you've got a few solutions, but it's not super developed. If you look at AVAX, it's similar. AVAX is really good at GameFi, but like Luna, it has that unique angle of being able to facilitate payments as well. And we saw that with Chai Payments. Chai Payments actually blew up to become one of the biggest payments facilitators in South Korea. They use this KRT stablecoin, which is pegged to the Korean won. And then what that stablecoin actually allows you to do is purchase goods. So you can go into a shop and you can use the Terra blockchain using this stablecoin to be able to do payments. And we saw mass adoption. We saw 2.5 million users, which is 5% of South Korea's population, actually adopt Chai Payments. We saw $6 billion in yearly transaction volume. And the Chai card actually does 50% of the transactions on the Luna chain. So it's a real life example of how unique Luna can be used. And that's why it's so unique as a project, because it's not just limited to DeFi and Pondonomics. It's got much more scope than that. It can become the payments network we've always wanted. We know Bitcoin isn't that efficient for small payments. It's great for large payments. It's super secure. But for everyday payments, the fees aren't ideal. Whereas something like Terra, super low fees, super quick and highly scalable, that could potentially be a payments network that is utilized. Imagine being able to use UST and pay for that to buy your morning coffee, or go and buy a Gucci bag with your UST after you make all these Luna gains. Like you can use this UST to actually facilitate payments on the Terra network. And we know how Terra is kind of linked. We know that the more UST is actually minted, the more Terra is burnt. So as UST adoption increases, we actually see Luna being burnt, which means that the Luna circulating supply is reduced, which pushes the Luna price up. And in today's video, I'll be showing you some modeling that can kind of give us an idea of how high the Luna price can go to do with the UST adoption. Because the more it's adopted, the more of a benefit it is for Luna holders. The less supply, the more Luna can actually push up in price. So when you're buying Luna, you're essentially betting on increased adoption of UST right now, because UST is like one of the biggest components of Luna. So if you're betting on Luna, you're betting on increased UST adoption. And I have this thread on my Twitter, which goes through Luna as well and goes through some of the fundamentals. And it has this chart, which kind of shows the pricing mechanism. And we can see here that for every UST minted, the equivalent amount, the equivalent dollar amount of Luna is actually burnt. So we are seeing a real supply shock potentially starting to happen with the Luna token. And that's what's pushing the price up. This mass UST adoption is what's actually pushing the price up right now. It's the fundamentals of, wow, if UST becomes the biggest stablecoin, what happens to the Luna price? What happens to the Luna burn? I mean, the supply shock could be potentially crazy. It could push us to become a top 3 coin. But we just have to kind of sit back for a second and look at what's happening with the fundamentals. Look at what's happening with the UST growth and adoption and kind of make a prediction from there on where it could potentially head. So let's go on to the UST growth. Let's have a look at how UST has actually been growing. As we know, for every UST minted, the equivalent amount of Luna is burnt. So we want to see this UST adoption growing to be able to burn more Luna. The more UST is used, the more Luna is burned. It's as simple as that. You're betting on UST if you're buying Luna. Obviously, it's not as simple as that because we have DeFi on Luna. We have other stablecoins on Luna, but UST is the main driver right now of this kind of supply shock that we're seeing. So if we look at the market cap of UST, it's increased significantly over the past year. Look at this parabolic growth in UST. I mean, what were we sitting at? Like 2.8 billion, and now we're sitting at over like 13 billion in just a matter of months. Like UST's basically 10x'd from like 6 months ago in terms of how many UST are actually on the market. So we're seeing Luna being burnt at an astonishing rate because the UST adoption is growing. We're seeing UST go cross-chain. We're seeing UST on, they've got a Rune collaboration happening soon. We saw UST be deployed on AVAX a couple of weeks ago. I know the integration's happening with Phantom. A little bit of alpha for you guys. That's happening soon. So actually, that's pretty big alpha. So smash the like button for that alpha. That's a massive, massive deal. UST on Phantom, the biggest DeFi network in crypto right now in terms of hype and in terms of like TVL growth. Like that could be massive. Don't know when that's happening, but it is, because UST is being added to multiple chains. So we want to look at kind of where we're framing ourselves now. We're still at an early stage of UST adoption. We're at a stage where Anchor Protocol is kind of dictating how much Luna is being minted. Whereas in the future, we're going to see it, as we're seeing on AVAX and Rune, like we're going to see this on multiple blockchains. And once it becomes a cross-chain, a truly cross-chain stablecoin, that's when we'll see the explosive growth in terms of the Luna price, because the amount of UST being minted will be crazy. So let's actually look at the charts. Let's look at what's happened with the Luna burn, because I want to give you guys the data behind how much Luna is actually being burnt, right? Because we need to know that before we can look at how it affects the price. So let's go through and look at the Terra analytics. This website's great. It's called terra.smartstake.io, and it pretty much shows you how much Luna is being burnt on a day-to-day basis. We can see in the past week, the supply chain of Luna is pretty much over 1.5 million per day is being burnt. 1.7 million burnt. 1.4 million the next day, burnt. 1.7 million the next day, burnt. 1.3 million the next day, burnt. The supply reduction of Luna is increasing at an astonishing rate. And you can toggle through the weeks here, and we can see that it's constantly happening in the past month. Every day, I mean, we burn over 2 million Luna on this day. Like, that is incredible. And we can see the circulating supply is dropping. It was 400, and now just a few weeks later, it's like 375. Like every day, this circulating supply is dropping. I'm pretty sure the statistic is that almost 20% of total Luna has been burnt now. I think I saw a tweet on that, quote me if I'm wrong, but it's around 20% of the amount of Luna that has been burnt now. So we're now seeing an incredible supply crunch. So if this keeps happening and every day we're burning 1.5 Luna, then eventually we're going to reach a point where there's simply just not enough Luna. Like there's too much demand for UST because it's a great stable coin, but then there is not enough demand. There's too much demand for Luna to be able to offset the supply crunch we'll see. So when you're betting on Luna, you're betting on UST. I love UST, so I bet on Luna. That's why it's my biggest holding. It's as simple as that. I really believe in UST, and I really believe in the Luna network, and I think it has additional utility, like I explained before, beyond some of these other L1s that are kind of one-dimensional in a way. Like maybe focus more on DeFi, don't kind of have that reach into like the payment sphere and can't really capitalize on multiple sectors, whereas Luna can. So that's why it's one of my favorite projects. It's probably one of my top 2 projects. I love Phantom. Luna would be right up there for me in terms of my favorite projects. It's great. If I had to pick a portfolio with only 2 coins and it was to be risk averse, like pretty safe compared to degen coins, probably be just 50-50 Luna and Phantom. I don't recommend that. I think diversification is key. But if I was cornered, I would probably pick Luna and Phantom because they're just great projects. But Anchor is probably the driver of UST right now. So as I said, UST is going cross-chain and UST is being used a lot, in Korea and stuff. But it's also being driven by Anchor Protocol, and it's still the main driver of minting UST right now. So we have to look at the health of Anchor Protocol and kind of what's happening with Anchor Protocol to be able to make a decision on where Luna is headed, because it still has a massive influence over UST. So we can see right now, the yield reserve is 478 million. I know Do Kwon, he topped up the Anchor Protocol reserve with over 450 million UST. It's a massive increase. And it's because they're trying to buy time right now. So we can see the deposits on Luna is $8.2 billion. $8.2 billion deposited of UST. So people have taken 8.2, deposited into Anchor Protocol to earn the 19.5% earn rate. But there's only $2.4 billion worth of UST, which is actually being borrowed. That means people putting up Luna or Ethereum as collateral to be able to loan against that collateral and mint UST. So every time someone borrows against their assets, which would be Ethereum or Luna, they're actually minting UST, which is burning Luna, right? So we need this borrowing amount to correspond a bit better with the depositing amount, because it's an issue. Because what happens over time is the yield reserve drains as deposits offset borrows. So as long as deposits are more than borrows, you're going to see the yield reserve dropping in a linear fashion. And the yield reserve is pretty much the backing. So it's the amount of UST that's kind of sitting in the sides, in a safe bank account, in a safe fund that can be used to pay out stakers. So if you stake your Luna for 20% a year, it's draining the yield reserve to be able to pay out stakers because there's not enough amount being borrowed. So Anchors isn't making enough. So this kind of sounds worrying because you're thinking, oh, eventually the yield reserve is going to drop to zero, right? And that could be quite worrying because that could affect the Luna price. And 100% it could. If the yield reserve drops to zero again, as we saw a couple months ago, there was a massive FUD. We saw the Luna price drop down to, what was it, like $43 in the midst of the FUD until the yield reserve was rebalanced and they added 450 million UST more. So what can Anchor do to become more sustainable, and what is their roadmap? Because obviously, eventually, we're going to have borrows and deposits slightly more similar to be able to sustain the protocol and sustain the health of Luna as well, because it is reliant on UST, obviously. But they have a few plans, and this is what Anchor needs to do in order to make it more sustainable. Firstly, it needs to add more options for collateralization. Right now, you can only collateralize Luna or Ethereum. It needs to be cross-chain. It needs to have AVAX, Phantom, Solana. It needs to have Bitcoin. It needs to have multiple assets you can put up as collateral. Imagine the amount of liquidity they're going to attract once you can stake Bitcoin, like and mint UST. Like imagine the sheer amount of borrowing people are going to want to do on Anchor because they can finally use their Bitcoin. A lot of people bought Bitcoin. They don't want to sell it because they don't want to pay tax. And like, who wants to sell Bitcoin, right? Whereas if Anchor starts offering it as a potential asset to borrow against, or not even Bitcoin, like Phantom, AVAX, any of these projects, you'll be able to put it up in Anchor and mint UST, which means burning Luna, right? So the more projects they can add as collateral on Anchor protocol, one, Anchor becomes more sustainable because it incentivizes borrowing. And two, it also mints more UST, which burns more Luna. So it's kind of genius. But that is why they put the 450 million in there, because they're buying time. They need dev power. They need time to strategize and come up with this plan. So Anchor protocol, I have immense faith in the team. It's a great protocol. It has backing from Terra itself. It's a great project, but they do need to buy time right now, and that's exactly what they're doing to implement these changes. Some other stuff they can do to become more sustainable, drop the earn rates. The earn rates right now on UST are 20%. We love the earning, like it's a great rate. But if they dropped it down to like 15%, potentially that gives more leeway to be able to pay out holders, to be able to pay out stakers and not drain the yield reserve so much. They could also up the borrowing incentives. Right now, you lose money. I think it's 0.5% for borrowing. If they maybe up the emissions on the borrow side instead of the earn side, that would incentivize people to borrow. Because if you're getting paid to borrow money, I mean, isn't that ideal? That's like a negative interest rate. That's incredible, right? So you want to be getting paid to borrow. So they can potentially do that as well. So there's multiple options how they can become more sustainable. And those are the options they're probably looking at right now to make the protocol more sustainable. And the sustainability of Anchor would be amazing for Luna, because Luna can't hit these massive targets that I'll show you in a second if Anchor isn't sustainable. Because Anchor is the bedrock of the Luna ecosystem right now, whether we like it or not. It's a major driver of minting and staking UST. So we need Anchor to be sustainable. But what can happen to the Luna price in the future? That is obviously what you clicked on this video to see, obviously alongside all this other amazing stuff. You guys want to know what the Luna price prediction is. You want to know what my targets are. And I'll be running through some analysis to kind of help you decide what kind of levels we could be hitting and where I think we could be hitting if certain KPIs, so performance indicators, are met. Murray Rudd did an amazing thread on this. I recommend checking out his work because he covers Luna extensively. And I think there's some really good price modeling here. So he did a Substack article, and you can go onto Murray Rudd's Twitter and check this out. This Substack article dictates what the Luna price could be at the current rate of UST adoption. We're seeing parabolic growth with UST. So he actually curved on an X and a Y axis what the Luna price would do if UST keeps minting at certain rates. And he set targets. So he said, if Luna mints at the current rate, if UST mints at the current rate, what will happen to the Luna price? If UST adoption halves, and what's the bear scenario, what happens to the Luna price? So he gives a few scenarios here, but I'm going to skip to the juicy bit because I know you guys want to see this, his price prediction, and then I'll give you my thoughts on whether I think it's accurate. He went through all this modeling, and I won't get too into it because it's very in-depth, but he goes through his process, and I vetted the process. I think it's pretty good. There is some flaws in the logic. It's optimistic, but at the same time, I think some of the points he makes were actually conservative in terms of the UST growth trajectory. So he modeled the trajectory using a bunch of modeling, and he looked at the current UST growth, and he looked at kind of what the potential catalyst would be, and he curved it on a trajectory, and he took the median trajectory. So he took the amount that he thought was most realistic to base his Luna price models off. Then, if you go down further through the thread, he gets to the main event. He says what his price predictions are with confidence intervals. And these are his price predictions. if UST hits a $50 billion market cap, we know it's 13 billion now. So if UST 4x in adoption, which it's already 10x over the last 6 months, so another 4x is highly likely, then UST would be, Luna would be $455. So if UST hits a $50 billion market cap, based on the Luna burn and based on demand for Luna price would be roughly $455. So this is a great way to reverse engineer our Luna price predictions, because we can look at what's happening with the UST, and then we can also model that against Luna to work out how the Luna price will respond to the UST growth. $455 is the answer by 2023 if UST has a market cap of 50 billion, which is honestly pretty realistic. I don't think that's out of the blue. I think that's pretty much we're on trajectory to hit that, and maybe even sooner, right? A lot can happen in crypto, obviously, but these are just models based on today's figures, and I think they are pretty realistic. If UST hits 100 billion market cap, so around an 8x from here, the Luna price is $2,116. Like over $2,000 per Luna if UST hits 100 billion, based on this model, based on Murray's model. And if UST hits $200 billion, the Luna price is 18,000. I know it seems crazy. I know these numbers are insane, like 18,000 by 2025, like that's nuts. But it's like using basic maths. It's modeling based on the UST growth and the Luna burn. As I showed you before, look at the amount of Luna being burnt just with $13 billion worth of UST. Imagine the amount of Luna being burnt once we start getting up to this range of 200 billion UST. That's why I said, if you're betting on Luna, you're betting on UST adoption. You're betting on the stablecoin becoming more adopted. That's why Luna is one of the most powerful protocols in crypto, because it's so unique. We haven't seen this across other L1s. We haven't seen this kind of supply dynamic. And I've said it for a long time. I honestly think Luna has the best tokenomics in crypto. It does. Sure, it does rely on UST. And that means it does rely on Anchor Protocol being healthy. And there are issues with Anchor Protocol, as we've seen recently. But if they can be ironed out, and I think they can, then these targets are very, very, I can see them occurring. I'm not saying they're very likely, but at the same time, like it isn't out of the realm of possibility. So what is my opinion on these price predictions? And Murray gives you a few more predictions based on different models. So he goes through more conservative and more aggressive approaches. He'll give you more approaches, but this is the conservative one that I showed you, or his middle one. And I think it's honestly pretty accurate. I think $455, if we can see a general crypto market uptrend. So if the crypto market and Bitcoin is higher than it is now in 2023, which I fully believe that it will be, unless there's a huge black swan event, I think we're on pace to do that. Then I think Luna has a good chance of hitting $455. From now, that's like a 5 or a 6x. So you'd happily take a 5x in a year. Like that's brilliant, right? Because you can also stake your Luna. We obviously know I love DeFi. You can 5x your Luna, and then you can also stake it and earn 30% on it in the meantime. I did a video on that. It's actually on my Twitter as well. But I'll be going through more Luna staking strategies over the next week or so to help you guys stake Luna, because we know the fundamentals are great, but you want to earn yield on that as well, right? So that price prediction of $455 next year, honestly, could occur. I think it's not out of the realms of a possibility at all. A 5x is very conservative based on UST modeling. All we need to hit is $50 billion UST market cap. We're already at 13. Like what's that, a 4x? Like it's really, really possible. It's not super bullish. This isn't a moon channel. I don't come on here and give moon price predictions. This is based on hard data using Murray's, algorithm. So it's obviously up to his discretion, but it's based on data. I've looked through it. I think the data's solid. And I'd recommend checking it out. If you want to learn more about this modeling, it goes super in depth. I don't have time to cover every single part of this in this video, but you can check this out. He does some really interesting stuff. So I think it's a really good model. Just quickly before we wrap up, I want everyone in the comments to give me your Luna price prediction. So let's say in a year's time, exactly in a year from now, I want you to comment what you think the Luna price will be. Do you think we're going to be at $455 by August 2023? Let me know. What's your price prediction of Luna? Let me know in the comments, because I think we have a real good shot of that 5x. And obviously long term, we have scope to hit 18,000. I think Luna probably has the fundamentals to be a top 3 project. When I kind of look at crypto, I see Luna kind of third. I see Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Luna. That's just how I view crypto. Honestly, that's how I view the fundamentals. I think Luna has that potential to be third. I'm seeing lots of predictions coming in. You guys, you're loving the predictions. I've got one here, $1,000, 380. That's pretty much in line with what I think as well. I think 380, pretty fair. 500, 475. Yeah, you guys are pretty spot on with that, in my opinion. I think the 4 to 5x in a year and a bit, I think that's very possible. But it does rely on the crypto market. So I can't give you a definitive price prediction. All I can show you is the data. And I've showed you the data. Luna's being burnt, UST adoption's increasing, and then I've also showed you the modeling. Like, it doesn't get more scientific than that. We're not mooning on this channel. We're not giving crazy price predictions. We're looking at the data. And that's what my show is all about every day, giving you guys the data, not the crazy price predictions. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned a little bit about Luna and where we could potentially be going. It's a super exciting project. I think we have massive growth potential, and the ecosystem and its DeFi ecosystem is exploding as well. So it's something I'm going to continue to cover on the channel extensively throughout the next few weeks, because I think it's something that could be really valuable to you guys. So make sure you're tuning in every single day, because you don't want to miss out on this stuff. I'll be delivering some amazing staking strategies for you guys to take advantage of the ecosystem. I hope you enjoyed the show. Have a lovely day. Peace out.